What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 14 top 70 flex rankings, helping you guys set your lineups for the final week of the fantasy regular season. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. But let's dive right into Tier 1, the locks in your lineup. I wouldn't get super concerned over the order. These guys in any normal size league are going to be in your lineups. We've got Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, JSN, Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, and Trey McBride. Even at the tight end position, like Trey McBride deserves to be in here with all these other stud high-end wide receiver ones. And then Tier 2, these guys are also typically going to be locks in your normal size leagues. Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Nico Collins, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Jameson Williams, A.J. Brown, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, and Jalen Waddle. I will point out Chris Olave did not practice on Wednesday with a back injury. I believe this is something he's been dealing with, so I'm not overly concerned. Like, he was limited, throughout parts last week, ended up playing, had a fine game. If he's out there, I'll trust Chris Olave in my lineup. Starting off with Tier 3, I've got Javonte Williams going up against the Lions. His workload has been really solid. It's just a tough matchup this week. The Lions are allowing the fewest points per game to the running back position. Kyren Williams, solid matchup here. Blake Corum, definitely getting more work than you'd like if you roster Kyren, but he's still been a very solid back end running back one play. Then I've got Breece Hall, great usage. The production has been solid as of late. Also not super scared of this matchup here against the Dolphins. RJ Harvey up next, going up against the Raiders. Game script wise, I think this is a good spot for RJ Harvey. His usage last week looked good. Wasn't super efficient on the ground, but I think the big deal was he was getting those goal line opportunities, led to 2 touchdowns. Broncos should be able to put up points in this matchup. So RJ Harvey, I do think he belongs in this tier. Quinshon Judkins, the biggest issue with Judkins is that he doesn't catch passes and he's not super game script proof. This is a matchup against the Titans where I would be shocked if the Titans just blow them out. I'm not saying the Browns are a lock to win, but it's at least going to be competitive where Judkins should have his typical usage. Also in this tier, Brock Bowers going up against the Broncos. It is just a tough matchup. I think in a even to plus matchup, Bowers would be ranked higher, but we've already seen him have one really rough game against the Broncos earlier on this season. A couple of wide receivers, Lad McConkey, Emeka Ibuka. For Lad here, I'm expecting Herbert to play. If Herbert's out, could definitely drop him from the spot. For Ibuka, he's definitely struggled under 10 PPR points in 6 of his last 7 games, but the targets have been there. I believe in the talent. You just need Baker to be a little bit more accurate, Ibuka to not have, a drop here or there, and I think he'll get back on track. Mike Evans, I do think he's actually going to play this week. They opened his practice window. He was limited, I believe, on Wednesday. So it's very possible that Evans is back, but we saw early on in the season, even with Evans healthy, Ibuka was still able to log some solid games. And I also don't think he's going to be losing out on routes to Mike Evans. I think if anything, it'll be like Chris Godwin, who's getting the wide receiver 3 routes. A few more guys in this tier. Saquon Barkley, projections are decent for this game. He's been underwhelming, but just with his role on this offense, he's still someone who's going to be a lock in your lineup, in most leagues. Then I've got Ashton Genty. The usage has been there. The receiving, numbers have been awesome as of late. It's a tough matchup against the Broncos. You're just hoping the Raiders can keep this competitive so he can actually log, a decent amount of touches. And then the last guy in this tier, Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's been brutal, under 12 PPR points in his last 4 games, coming off a week 13 where he had 2.4 PPR points. Just awful. This is a good get-right spot, though. You've got J.J. McCarthy back, and I guess that's a positive after what we saw last week out of Brosmer. And then matchup-wise, it's a good spot here. Commanders, 6th in points per game allowed to the wide receiver position. So if there was going to be a game where Justin Jefferson would produce, I think this would be the one. Kicking off tier 4, I've got Michael Wilson going up against the Rams. This is assuming that Marvin Harrison Jr. does not play this week. He did not practice on Wednesday with his heel injury. So for Michael Wilson, he had the 2 monster games with Marv out. When Marv returned in week 13, Michael Wilson fell back down to earth. If Marv is out, I think you got to fire up Michael Wilson as a really strong play. Then I've got a running back in Aaron Jones going up against the Commanders. He was limited on Wednesday with his shoulder injury, but the Commanders are allowing the 3rd most points per game to the running back position. So if Aaron Jones is healthy, this is a great spot for him. Number 37, I've got Travis Kelce going up against the Texans. It's not a great matchup, but Kelsey's just been ultra productive since week 5, 15 and a half points per game. Up next, Mike Evans, like I mentioned with Ibuka, definitely possible he returns this week, limited on Wednesday, coming back from that collarbone injury. If he's out there, like it doesn't seem like they're super rushing him back. If they think he's healthy, good enough to go, collarbone doesn't strike me as an injury where there's going to be some sort of like reacclimation period, at least physically. So if they're playing him, I'd feel totally comfortable firing up Mike Evans as like a solid wide receiver 2 play. Another wide receiver with Devonta Smith. This is kind of just where he settled in, like mid to back end wide receiver 2 option. Few running backs here, actually a run of running backs. Travis Etienne, Jalen Warren, Devin Neal, Kenneth Walker, and DeAndre Swift. For Devin Neal here, actually had a really strong usage in week 13, 77% of the opportunities, 14 carries, 3 targets. On paper, a good matchup this week against the Buccaneers, who are top 8 in points per game allowed to the running back position. Kenneth Walker's usage has been very solid as of late. The touchdowns still not getting there consistently, but it does feel like he's pulling away at least a little bit from Zach Charbonnet. Then I've got DeAndre Swift going up against the Packers. You might be wondering why I have him ranked like a decent amount ahead of Kyle Monangai. Kyle Monangai will appear, I think, in like the back of tier 5. For me, it's just a game script thing where the Bears are 6.5 point dogs. So I think if they're trailing, more pass heavy game script, I think that usage is going to favor DeAndre Swift over Monangai. Then I've got back-to-back tight ends with Dalton Kincaid and Tyler Warren. Kincaid limited Wednesday with hamstring and knee injuries. If he's able to suit up, this is just like the dream matchup for tight ends. The Bengals are allowing the most points per game to the tight end position, and it's not by a small margin. Like it's by 5 full PPR points per game. So really hoping he can get back out there this week. And then Tyler Warren, just been a pretty steady option at the tight end spot. A few wide receivers to close out this tier. Zay Flowers coming off a brutal week 13. This is a good get-right spot here, though, against the Steelers, who are allowing the second most points per game to the wide receiver position. Jacoby Myers up next. He was the wide receiver 1 for the Jaguars in snaps, routes, and targets in week 13. 6 receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown. Parker Washington's banged up. Brian Thomas Jr. apparently is not good at football anymore after an amazing rookie season. Jacoby Myers looks like the number 1 target for the Jaguars. And then the last guy in this tier, I have bumped Alec Pierce ahead of Michael Pittman and actually have him a tier ahead of Pittman at this point. While Pittman's kind of been struggling, Alec Pierce has been producing consistently. Week 13, 4 for 78 and a touchdown. He scored at least 17 PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. Now, starting off tier 5 with a run at wide receiver, I've got Terry McLaurin, Courtland Sutton, Michael Pittman, Christian Watson, and then Deebo Samuel. For Terry, they kind of eased him back into his role in week 13. 59% route participation, only ran 32 routes, but was targeted 14 times on those 32 routes, 7 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. We'll see if he gets Jaden Daniels back. Either way, I think he's a fine like wide receiver 3 option. Then I've got Courtland Sutton. Hasn't been great as of late. Decent week 13. Good matchup, though, on paper. Raiders 5th in points per game allowed to the wide receiver position. Mentioned him, a few players ago. Michael Pittman, he hasn't been great as of late. The volume hasn't really been there. Hasn't been hitting in the yardage department. And he just doesn't have the same like big play upside as a guy like Alec Pierce. So if the volume is relatively similar, I'm going to favor Alec Pierce at this point in the season. Then Christian Watson just continues to log solid performances. We'll see on the status of Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden, but at this point, so far last few weeks, does look like the wide receiver 1 for the Packers. And then for Deebo, it's a tough matchup. Vikings, fewest points per game allowed to the wide receiver position. Also with Terry back, I do think that just hurts Deebo Samuel's fantasy value. Then we've got some running backs, Kamani Vidal, Lamarion Hampton, Kareem Hunt, Bam Knight, Kyle Monangai. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't really know how to evaluate these Chargers running backs because I do think Hampton's going to be back this week, but Vidal has been super impressive. Harbaugh has really been hyping him up. Like, I think these guys are going to be in a very solid split, and not even in the sense of like, oh man, like Hampton's running back 1 spot is in jeopardy long term. Like, I still am fully convinced that Hampton is the guy moving forward. But like just for this one specific week, Harbaugh has really been hyping up Vidal. I'm expecting close to a 50-50, and like both of them don't feel like the best plays in this specific matchup against the Eagles. I know the Eagles got torched by the Bears in week 13, but with this Chargers offensive line, I just don't know how efficient either of these running backs are going to be. Another running back with Kareem Hunt going up against the Texans. Even with Pacheco back, really strong usage in week 13. Looks like he's the clear-cut number one. Bam Knight, also a tough matchup going up against the Rams. He scored at least 13 PPR points in his last 3 games. And then in week 13, took 14 of the 24 running back opportunities. Then we've got Kyle Monungai coming off the monster week 13, 22 carries for 130 yards and a touchdown. He has scored a touchdown in each of his last 4 games. Something to monitor, he did not practice on Wednesday with an ankle injury. Hopefully that's just kind of like precautionary, giving him a day off if he's a little bit banged up. But if he misses Thursday, then, DeAndre Swift could definitely get a boost if Monungai's not going to play this week. And then the final guy in this tier, Khalil Shakir, going up against the Bengals. I really like the matchup. I think the Bills are going to put up points. Shakir has just been super inconsistent, like under 10 receiving yards in 2 of his last 3 games. And then the 6th and final tier, starting it off with Woody Marks going up against the Chiefs. He is banged up, did not practice on Wednesday with an ankle injury. Chiefs are bottom 6 in points per game allowed to the running back position. And then Woody Marks' usage has been awesome, but he's also just been super unproductive for fantasy with those opportunities. So now he's got a tough matchup and he's banged up. Just don't feel awesome about Woody Marks this week. Someone who's a big faller, especially after the first few weeks of the season, Rome Odunze going up against the Packers. Not only has he been pretty much unplayable as of late, but now he's also banged up, did not practice on Wednesday with a foot injury. Someone who's a big riser. If you told me like after week 2, week 3, I would have Rome Odunze and Adonai Mitchell ranked back to back, I would have told you were insane. But Adonai Mitchell traded to the Jets, logged a really strong week 13, 8 for 102 and a touchdown. He's been targeted 23 times in his last 3 games. There's just like very little target competition on this offense. And Mitchell is a very viable like flex play potential wide receiver 3 option. Then I've just got to run on all these tight ends I had kind of in the same tier. So Kyle Pitts, Aronde Gadsden, Brenton Strange, Jake Ferguson, Juwan Johnson. I will point out I moved Kyle Pitts up. You can probably tell by now, but Drake London, I don't have him in the rankings. Raheem Morris said he was day-to-day, but he's still like not legitimately practicing. He's just kind of like jogging on the side. I don't think Drake London is going to play, so I moved Kyle Pitts to the top of this tier at tight end, coming off a nice week 13, 7 receptions for 82 yards. The second to last wide receiver in this video, Darnell Mooney, he now enters the rankings with me projecting Drake London to be out. And then the final player in my rankings, Quentin Johnston going up against the Eagles. Not a super high floor player. This is obviously assuming that Justin Herbert is back in the lineup. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 70. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.